Good evening, all of you. So in the previous session, we have seen the number of keywords and we have seen the backslash constants, that is /n, /t, /v, and these are used for formatting the input statements, input and output statements. So /n is for new line character, to printing the text in new line, and the /t is for horizontal tab, /v is used for a vertical tab. So in the previous session we have seen all these three by using a simple example, and in today's session let us have a look at the data types. So in the earlier session we have seen what are the different types of data, categories of data. So the data can be classified into three categories. One is integers, another one is characters, another one is some fractional numbers. So example, coming to this integers example, all the natural numbers we can say them as an integers. So 1, 2, 30, 40, any number, any natural number can be considered as an integer. And characters, any special symbols or a characters, alphabets or a numerical data will comes under this character. So 0 to 9, small letters, small a to small z, capital letters, capital A to capital Z, and all the other special symbols, any special symbol, that means comma, full stop, at the rate, exclamatory mark, dollar, everything including the space. A white space is also a character. And coming to the fractional numbers, which are having a decimal part, that is 3.5, next to 4.3, etc. All the decimal parts we call them as a fractional numbers. So in order to represent these integers, characters and fractional numbers, we have to use a specific keywords in our C compiler. So in order to represent this integer type of data, we have to use an int keyword. That means the keyword used is integer for this integer data, and for character data the keyword used is char, char. For this fractional the keyword is float and double. So we can use any one, double or float. So the data types: integer, character, float, double. So there is a slight difference between this float and double. So both are used to store the fractional part, fractional numbers. So that means the numbers which are having a decimal parts. So a slight difference. The difference is first difference is a range. So the range of float is less than the range of double. So float is having a limited range, and if we want to exceed that range, we have to use this double keyword. And the second difference is decimal precision. Decimal precisions. So the float can support up to 6 decimal precisions. Double supports up to 4 decimals perceptions. Like if 10 by 3, if it is a float, the result will be 3.33333 and 3. So after so there are total 6 decimals, and if it is in double, So 3.333 and so on 3. So 14 decimals. It can support up to 14 decimals. That's the main difference between the float and double. One is range. The range of float is less than range of double. So there is a higher range in the double data type. And second one is the number of decimal positions it will support. So float supports up to 6 decimals and the double supports up to 14 decimals. Now, as we have seen in the previous sessions, the variables, we use the variables to store the data, and all those variables must be declared before using in the program, before they are used in the program. So those variables must be declared by using any one among these 4 data types. So which data type must be used for that variable? So that depends upon the value stored in that variable name. So if let us take a variable, any variable, so variable name. So the first rule is the variable name must not equal to any one among these keywords, must not match with that keywords, because the compiler will treat that name as a keyword rather than a variable if both are equal. So let us consider a variable some number. So number is a normal English name which is not equal to any one among the keywords. So we can use this number as a variable name. So it must be declared by using any one of these data type. So that depends upon the value which is stored in that number. If the number stores integers, we have to write as integer, int number. If the number stores fractional, then we have to use a float or double. That depends upon the value. If the value is within the range, we can declare as a float. If the value is exceeds the range out of the boundary of float, then we have to use this double, because the range of float is less than the range of double. Next, if it is a character, if the number consists of a character, then we have to use character data type. So it depends upon the value in the variable, we have to use the data type. So we have to declare declaration. That means we have to declare all the variables before using those variables in the C program. So if we use those variables before without declaring, then automatically the compiler gives an error as the variable is not declared. So the syntax means the rules to be followed while declaring a variable is, first we have to specify the data type, anyone, integer, character, float or double, that depends upon the value stored in that variable name, followed by variable name. So this variable name can be any English word, and we have to take care that we have to follow all the rules which I have specified in the previous session. I think we have seen some 5 rules to be followed while creating a variable name. The first and foremost rule is, very important rule is, this variable name must not match with any one of these keywords, and also only underscore symbol can be accepted, no white spaces must be required, and no other special symbols are allowed in this variable, and it can be alphanumeric. We can use both alphabets and numerical values. So this data type may be integer, character, float or double, that depends upon the value stored in that variable. So let us consider a problem adding of two numbers. So let us consider the problem adding of two numbers. And for this, for any problem, first we have to analyze the number of variables required. So for this one, so how many variables are required? So we are adding two numbers, so we require two variables which stores the two numbers. So this we can say as input variables. And after addition, after adding those two variables, the values of two variables, we have to store the result in the third variable. So one variable is required for storing the outputs. So it is called output variable. So before declaring the variable, first we have to analyze how many variables to be declared. So here in the addition of two numbers, we require two input variables which stores the two numbers to be added, and the one output variable where the addition of two numbers is performed and the result is stored. Now we have to analyze, or we have to think about this data type. Which data type we have to use for declaring a variables? If we are adding two integers, so those variables must be declared as int data type, and obviously the output will also be integer. So the output variable is also declared by using integers. And if we are adding two decimal values, so two variables must be in float or double. And automatically, if we add or subtract these float variables, the decimal values, the output may also come the float. So the output variable can also be declared using float or double. So we have to give a variable name. Let us take here A and B are the two input variables. A and B are two input variables, and the result is sum. Sum is a variable name we are declaring for the output, storing the output. So int A comma B is declaring two variables which holds the integer values, and int sum, here the sum is a result, the variable which stores the result which is of integer data type. So we have to declare it as int. Or if we are using the float, we can declare as float A comma B and float sum. If we declare this int A comma B, how much memory it will occupy? The question is how much memory it will allocate to these variables. So this statement implies we are declaring two variables. That means we are reserving two memory locations with the name A and B. So how much memory it should be allotted for variable A, and how much memory it should be allotted for B, and how much memory it should be allotted for sum. So the amount of memory reserved depends upon the data type. So if we declare a variable in integer, the size of memory occupied by that variable is 2 bytes. If it is a character variable, the size is 1 byte. If it is a float variable, the size is 4 bytes. If the double variable, the size is 8 bytes. So in this example, we are declaring two variables as input, integers. So total memory occupied by A and B are 2 and 2, total 4 bytes. And here the output variable, which is also declared in integer, so here 2 bytes. So the memory, in the memory there will be three memory locations, three address locations will be created. One is for A, one is for B, another one is for sum. So this size is 2 bytes, this is 2 bytes, this is 2 bytes. So if the statement int a comma b is executed in the C compiler, then automatically three memory locations will be allotted for three variables with a size 2 bytes, because we are declaring it as an integer data type. If it is a float, automatically it will be 4, 4 and 4. If it is a character, the size will be 1 byte, 1 byte and 1 byte. So four fundamental data types we have learned: integer, character, float and double. And these variables must be declared before using them in the program. So this is the syntax for declaring a variable data type followed by the variable name. So let us stop here. In the next session, I will explain the initialization of variables. That means storing a value, giving a value to the particular variable. So after declaring a variable, we have to give values to that variables. So that we will see in our next session. And also we will see some input and output statements, and then we can write a simple program for adding of two numbers using the compiler. We will see that in the compiler practical session.